What if I told you London to Berlin was just one sleep away? Well, sort of. Today we'll be taking a high-speed Eurostar train under the sea to mainland Europe, changing at the Belgian capital Brussels for Europe's newest sleeper train company, European Sleeper, for a final overnight journey to Berlin. This is going to be an epic journey, city centre to city centre, an over 1,000 kilometre trip across 5 different countries. London to Berlin, made possible by both high-speed and sleeper trains. Now sit back and enjoy the ride. Tonight's odyssey begins at St Pancras International, otherwise known as the UK's gateway to mainland Europe by train. This is by far one of the grandest stations in the UK, if not mainland Europe. The station design dates back to 1868 and is a Grade 1 listed building. This comes despite the threat of closure of the station in the 1960s, but was fortunately saved thanks to the successful campaigning by local demonstrators. It's safe to say that this station is a far cry from its derelict past. The arrival of the Eurostar here in November 2007 has really brought life into this station, and now sees over 50 million people visiting it a year, and not just for travel. 1 in 6 are simply here to enjoy the many shops present within the station. It was just before Christmas when I travelled, so admiring this year's Christmas tree effort whilst looking around the fine shops and eateries is definitely a good way to kill time before being greeted by the long queue ahead of boarding. Eurostar boarding is open from 2 hours to half an hour before departure, though an earlier arrival certainly reduces the risks associated with being caught up in queues such as this. The boarding process begins with scanning your ticket on the barcode reader to pass through the barriers. I personally always choose e-tickets, though tickets can also be printed and offered in paper form if you prefer. Following this, a brief and quick security check is conducted. Unlike the plane, there's no need to remove liquids and electronics, and it's fairly simple from my experience. Access to the departure lounge is then granted following 2 passport checks, one by the British and another by the French national authorities, to grant access to the European Schengen area, which the UK isn't a part of. It's no secret that capacity at St Pancras is still a long-standing issue with Eurostar, and that's highlighted pretty well here. However, if you can, you may want to make a trip to Eurostar's Business Premier Lounge, accessible to those on a Business Premier ticket or Eurostar Carte Blanche and Étoile members. The price for Business Premier, in my opinion, isn't really justified, and the main benefit is flexibility, so it may be best just to check out the cafes and shops located within the departure lounge instead. Anyway, our Eurostar train today is number ES9142, the 1504 to Brussels via Lille. As you can see, it's still relatively early for the platform to be shown. However, if you want to beat the queues, just do a search of the train number on real-time trains, and you'll then be able to view the platforms ahead of everyone else. Our train is shown as departing from platform 5, so just to the left of the departure lounge once you clear passport control. Around 20 minutes before departure, we're now called to board. I'm at the other side of the train in coach 8, but first I wanted to get a closer look at our train today before boarding. And here we are. Our Eurostar E320 train is at the platform. Eurostar operates 17 of these newer E320s, part of the Siemens Volaro family, on all of their routes which were built from 2011 to 2018. Eurostar also operates 8 of their original E300 trains on the London to Paris and Brussels routes, though you'll more than likely end up travelling on an E320 nowadays. Along with the Team GB branding for the Rugby World Cup in France last year, this set sports Eurostar's new logo, following the merger with Thales, and whilst I do prefer the older one, the new one is warming up to me. Which do you think is better? Let me know below. Boarding may not be the most efficient once the crowds come in, but it's still an improvement over the legacy TGV trains which Eurostar has in its fleet. Coach 8 is standard class with a 2x2 seating layout and a nice mix of airline and table seats. I'll be in the former for the 2-hour ride to Brussels this afternoon. Today's journey to Berlin will be split into two legs. The first leg will see us reach Brussels, where we then switch to European sleeper to cross Belgium and the Netherlands, making stops at the key cities of Antwerp, Rotterdam, The Hague and Amsterdam, before arriving into the German capital at 6:48 am the next morning, taking almost 15 hours to cover the 1,200 kilometre trip. Our departure from London is on time at 3 p.m. UK time.
Yeah, it's fine. In fact, I've got this 300 odd. It's okay, it's alright.
It's now straight onto the HS1 high-speed line, almost immediately after leaving St Pancras. Perhaps the biggest white elephant of the line is Stratford International, which we speed through around 5 minutes after departure. Despite the name and intent by Eurostar to stop here for the London 2012 Olympic Games, no international services have ever called here. The name remains to distinguish it from Stratford Regional Station just down the road. The HS1 passes through Essex before reaching Kent, specifically running parallel to the Tilbury branch served by C2C services. A large amount of freight traffic for overseas goods also runs on both routes. The grand view of the Dartford crossing at sunset can be seen as we prepare to head into Kent. This is a toll bridge over the River Thames that has been a vital link between Essex and Kent since 1991. Ebbsfleet International is one of the victims of recent cuts made by Eurostar as a result of Brexit and the COVID-19 pandemic to allow them to focus on their core routes, but is still served by South Eastern's domestic high-speed services to London and other destinations in Kent. Perhaps one of the most scenic highlights of this route is the Medway Viaduct, which allows trains traversing the HS1 to cross the River Medway and view some very picturesque landscape, especially with the sunset as a gorgeous backdrop. Ashford International is another victim of Eurostar's cuts in recent years, with Eurostar services not calling here despite the works performed on the platforms to make them more suitable for the E320 trains in late 2019. We instead use a viaduct to speed past Ashford at the HS1 top speed of 300 km per hour. Before long, we reach the end of the HS1 in as little as half an hour of travel, after which we slow down as we begin to enter what is undoubtedly one of the greatest engineering marvels of the world, the Channel Tunnel, and the second longest undersea tunnel in the world by overall length, losing out to Japan's Seikan Tunnel by a mere 3 metres. However, it has the longest undersea segment compared to it. One thing I do dislike about the rebrand is the absence of the Channel Tunnel trivia on the screens, but looking back to one of my E320 rides before the rebrand, we can see that we reach depths of 75 metres below sea level and cross a total length of 50.45 kilometres per tunnel, which to this day still astounds me. Sadly, you won't get to see a moving aquarium in the tunnel, so it's time to go to the Café Car. Previously branded Café Métropole, this has since been changed to Eurostar Café to coincide with the Eurostar rebrand. The selection is still rather limited, but it's a good place to kill time, get a light snack, and relax as we speed under the sea for the next 20 minutes, before emerging in Calais, France, marking our entry into mainland Europe. The Channel Tunnel has a history of illegal immigration. The fences you see to the right were an attempt to resolve this. Passing Calais Freton, yet another victim of the cuts I mentioned earlier. Yeah, there's a lot of them. Signals our entry onto the LGV Nord, the high-speed line providing the Channel Tunnel rail link on the French side, which opened in 1993. Here again, we reach speeds of 300 km per hour, which we're doing close to as we speak. Our first and only stop before Brussels is Lille Europe, only served by Eurostar on its services to Brussels and Amsterdam, with Paris services passing through here non-stop. The stop at Lille allows international travellers to connect to other destinations within France, as an attempt to partially make up for many connections Eurostar has removed since the COVID-19 pandemic. Leaving Lille sees us cross the Freton Triangle in the direction of the Belgian border. Shortly afterwards, we reach our final high-speed line of the trip, the HSL1, and as the name suggests, this is Belgium's first high-speed line, which opened in 1997 to link Brussels with the LGV Nord and ultimately Paris and the Channel Tunnel. 300 km per hour is once again achieved here, but like the UK's HS1, the journey on the line is short and sweet, as we prepare to head into Brussels after just over half an hour later, thus completing leg 1 of the journey to Berlin. Right, that's 2 hours down, nearly 13 to go. As we arrive into Brussels, here's your reminder to subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this content so far. Many more exciting trips like this are still to come in 2024, and I of course want you along with me. Thanks! Our E320 now rests here as it prepares to head back to London, but no rest for us just yet. Brussels South Station, where we've arrived, is the start of the second and final leg of the trip to Berlin tonight. Brussels Zuid, or Bruxelles Midi, is the main hub for international train travel in and out of Belgium, coming a long way from its past as a terminal station when it was first inaugurated in 1869. A station of this size naturally sees a large selection of shops and restaurants, which you'll more than likely want to use, given there's no evening meal service on the sleeper trains to Berlin. This station is one of Europe's busiest, and the busiest in Belgium, with over 357,000 passengers annually, and it's safe to say that arriving here during rush hour isn't generally a good idea, given the large crowds, especially if it's your first time visiting here. If you'd rather take a more relaxed approach to this trip, you could always catch the 13:04 and 14:04 departures from London, which gives you more time to look around the city should you wish, but I personally plan my connections very tight. Well, I say that, but there's still just over an hour before the train actually departs, the 1922 to Berlin Hauptbahnhof. Other ways to travel from Brussels to Germany include the former Thalys services, now operated under the Eurostar brand, to Cologne and Dortmund. I reviewed this under the Thalys brand if you want to check it out. Another existing option is to take the ICE International service to Cologne and Frankfurt. The trains on this route are due to be replaced in June 2024 with brand new ones, and should make the service much more reliable than it currently is. Again, I reviewed this service before, albeit from Amsterdam. Undoubtedly the most time-effective option, however, is to take a direct sleeper train, and tonight we'll be on Europe's newest sleeper operator, European Sleeper. This Dutch-owned startup company launched their first trains in May 2023 between Berlin and Brussels, and are due to extend services to Dresden and Prague on March 25th, a week after this video goes live. Brussels to Berlin sleepers are now also provided by Austria's ÖBB Nightjet service since December 2023 on Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays, but will soon run daily from autumn 2024, made possible thanks to the introduction of the Nightjet Next Generation sets. The train arrives 15 minutes prior to departure. The formation for tonight's train is 1 seated car, 5 couchette cars and 1 sleeper car, though as is my golden rule with sleeper trains, the seats are a false economy, and unless you're desperate, I would go for a couchette or sleeper cabin, especially for a near 12-hour trip such as this one. Hauling our train is a Bombardier Trax Class 186 locomotive, similar to those found on the NS Intercity Direct for example. This locomotive has international compatibility, capable of working in 6 different countries across 5 different voltages. The sleeper car which will be in tonight is a stainless steel AB30 car, rebuilt from the old P-type coaches dating from the 1950s in the 1990s for the Austrian, Belgian and Dutch railways. The couchette cars are a mixture of ex-Slovakian and Deutsche Bahn stock, and have a maximum occupancy of 6 people per compartment, though you can purchase sole occupancy for an additional fee in the event solo cabins are unavailable. As I'm in a solo cabin, boarding is done from the couchette car next to the AB30 sleeper car. Here the host, or in my case hostess, checks your ticket with an ID check later done on board. For the latter, a passport's always the best form to use as you always have it to hand. And here's my room for tonight, cabin 42. There'll be plenty of time to check it out properly later, but we're first greeted to a leaflet which advertises investment into European Sleeper, given it's still in the startup phase, as well as a European Sleeper branded bottle of water. You'll also find a welcome leaflet to the Good Night train, as well as a menu, though as is the case with the Nightjet, this is fairly limited. The turnaround here at Brussels is very quick. We leave on time at 7:22 PM Central European Time, kicking off the final and longest leg to Berlin. As with all trains running north of Brussels South, we navigate through the city suburbs and its many stations before making it onto the main line towards the Netherlands. To my surprise, breakfast was given to me shortly after clearing Brussels, which I presume is to either avoid being disturbed in the morning or given the early arrival into Berlin. I'll show you more when I get up in the morning, but for now, let's check out the sleeper cabin interior. The seats are very plush and comfortable, as you'll find with most older generation carriages. Two of the seats also fold away to enable the lower bed to be made, which is done by request of the host, but we'll look at this later on. You'll find several light switches close to the windows to control the numerous lights present within the room, with one being next to the room entrance to function the light on the top bunk, which is accessible by a removable ladder just beneath one of the many designated spaces for hanging clothing with the coat hangers present. There's also plenty of space to place your luggage both overhead and under the bed once it's made. Personal bins are located just below the wash basin, the latter being a feature which differs from the other types of accommodation on board. It's here you'll also find a European power socket, though it is designed for shavers, so something to bear in mind. There's also a temperature control dial just next to the door to manage the ventilation system next to the windows, which both feature draw-down blinds for increased privacy during the night. Overall, don't expect perfection with the cabin, but also don't be disappointed either. It does the job at the end of the day and is comfortable and spacious enough. Before long, we find ourselves arriving into Antwerp's central station, the second largest city in Belgium and the largest before the Belgian border. The through station is underground, whilst the terminus station is the level above and said to be one of the most stunning in Europe. The stop here is around 10 to 15 minutes to pick up more passengers. Once that's done, it's back through the tunnels as we emerge to continue the crossing through Belgium, albeit on the conventional lines as opposed to the HSL Zoud used by Eurostar. At this point of the trip, I started to get a bit hungry, so I decided to find the hostess for something to eat. During this time, I also noticed a large amount of bike spaces in the rear Cochette car. There's no doubt this operator is Dutch. The train is still making its way through northern Belgium, however, not as fast as you'd expect if you were to travel on Eurostar's daytime trains. Currently, we're reaching just below the tracks and line's maximum 140 km/h speed, due to the lower speed conventional lines being used as we draw closer towards the Netherlands. I then went to the hostess before returning to my room. As I said, there's no dining car on board and there's nothing massively filling snack-wise, so this is just something to tide me over, and bear in mind also that this is exactly the same with the Nightjet. I've linked the full menu in the description below so you can check the onboard offerings for yourself. Before long, we crossed the border into our fourth country on this odyssey, the Netherlands, arriving into Roosendaal, which lies just after the Belgian border. On the platform is an NS Worm train, preparing to head to either Zwolle or Amsterdam. Now there are toilets on board the coaches, but I'd be lying if I said they were in good condition. The smell in this one in particular was unbearable, I have to say, so I didn't spend too long in here. I then went back to my room to continue focusing on the journey. Our next stop after Roosendaal is Rotterdam, the second largest city in the country, following which we progressed to Den Haag, or The Hague, the country's administrative capital and third largest city, where the Dutch government is situated. By the time we reached HS station, we picked up a 10-minute delay, mainly owing to congestion, as the train progressed through the Netherlands. As I was aiming to call it a day at Amsterdam, I notified the attendant that I wanted to have my bed made, and despite the initial difficulties due to a rather stiff lock, the bed eventually came out. I do have to give credit to the onboard team with European Sleeper. They really do go above and beyond from a customer service perspective, which is very good to see and promising for the company's future.
Lovely.
Safe to say, the room definitely looks a lot more like a sleeper cabin now, and as for the bed itself, it's a lot more comfortable than it looks. Compared to other sleeper trains I've tried, it's more plush and soft and will certainly provide a relaxing sleep indeed. Haarlem and its grand train shed is the last station we pass through before entering the Amsterdam suburbs. It's worth noting as well that since this video was recorded, European Sleeper have since added an additional stop at Schiphol Airport, providing great air rail links to Germany and very soon the Czech Republic. And finally, over 3 hours after leaving Brussels, and around 6.5 since leaving London, we pull into Amsterdam Centraal Station, the main station serving the largest city and de facto capital of the Netherlands. It was around 10:30 by the time we arrived here, and given the anticipated early arrival into Berlin, I used this as an opportunity to call it a day and get some sleep, given that it had been rather busy. Good night all, and I'll catch up with you in the morning.
The next morning.
And a very good morning. Have to say I had a brilliant sleep, probably as good as the one I had with the Night Riviera almost 2 years ago now. The journey progress is currently being announced.
Good morning, dear passengers. This is your train manager, and I would like to provide you with the latest information regarding the progress of our journey. Throughout the night, we have been able to continue our journey smoothly. We expect to arrive at Berlin Hauptbahnhof around 6:48 a.m. So please be ready. We only have a few minutes at the station to disembark. Thank you.
I then freshened up using the wash basin, got dressed and had my breakfast. Again, as with the night jet, don't expect anything groundbreaking, but it's enough to fill you up, ready to take on the day in Berlin. Our Trax locomotive is still powering away as it reaches the final leg to Berlin. As I mentioned earlier, this locomotive has international compatibility, meaning that unlike NS and Deutsche Bahn at the time of filming, there was no locomotive change performed at Bad Bentheim. And there we have it, London to Berlin by both high-speed and sleeper trains. Overall, it's a very useful link by just a simple change at Brussels, and whilst there are still some teething issues for European Sleeper, I'm very hopeful for the company's future. The upcoming carriage refurbishment and extension to Prague should really boost the service quality and give it the growth it needs to succeed. The cost for this trip was split as £97 for the Eurostar and €201.75 for my private cabin on European Sleeper, the latter also including a Seat 61 discount of 25% as a promotional offer. The hotel and time savings alone really make this to be a pretty good deal for the sleeper. However, my stance is still that Eurostar really need to reduce their prices to better compete with airlines. The arrival into Berlin Hauptbahnhof is amazingly for Germany on time. I want to hear your thoughts now. Have you taken a different route from London to Berlin by train before? What did you think of the method I used, and will you consider it? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and don't forget to like and share it to aid the channel's growth, and also don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more content such as this weekly. As mentioned by the host, there's a very short turnaround at Berlin as the set makes its way to the sidings to work the return to Brussels later today. As for me, I'm going to explore Berlin as it's actually my very first time here. Thanks so much for coming with me on this trip, and I look forward to bringing you with me on my next one.